Hey y'all, what's up? What's up? What's up? This is Paul, and God has qualified me to be your hip hop relationship and recovery coach. And I'm bringing to you another Kick Your Butt Out episode. As usual, y'all, before we get off into the content of the day, I have to say what I always say, and I strongly encourage you to get this into your thought process so you can incorporate this into your life. And that is, if you're looking for a butt, it's going to always be easy to find one. That, my friends, is a promise. Yes. So today, as you all can see, I have the honor, the privilege, the blessing, and the opportunity to interview a person that has played a big role in my life over the last 7 to 8 years, a person who has said something to me years ago. I'll just I'll tell the story, okay? So as I was taking classes to become a coach, she was one of my classmates. And I remember as we got the roster of the class, right, I saw all of these people's names with these letters behind their names and all of these wonderful things attached to their names. And my name just had Paul Yerby. So I automatically have felt a sense of inferiority, right? A sense of like not enough. And I kind of said that in my introduction. And I remember this lady stopped me. She said, "Sir, can I say something, share something with you?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "You're in a room because you're supposed to be there." And so that right there was one of the things that really took away the inferiority complex and really helped me to start to look at myself from a perspective of I do belong. And it really changed me a whole lot. And so I got the honor and the privilege of being able to share some more of my life with her. As a matter of fact, I met my wife through her. And listen, without further ado, I have to introduce my friend, motivator, mentor sometimes. She's actually one of my teachers, the Jessica Yaffa, the famous Jessica Yaffa. And I'm so glad to be able to interview her today. So she does a lot of motivational speaking and a lot of wonderful things. I get the opportunity to interview her today. So thank y'all so much. Thank you, Jessica.
Can you press that green button for me before we
Yes,
start?
I can.
That was really cool.
Oh, I got another one. Yes, Jessica Yaffa. So I really want to take this opportunity first to have Jessica tell us a little bit about herself. Plug your relationship coaching classes, right? Plug who you are, because again, Kick Your Butt Out is about moving stuff out of the way so that we could walk in our greatness. And she has a lot of great things going on. So we want to be able to give her the opportunity to talk about some of them. So go ahead if you would. Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me, my friend, and for those really generous and kind words.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, I have the pleasure and the honor of serving in a variety of capacities as a certified relationship coach. I think in my 25-ish years of being in the mental health field, always knew that I was destined to find my way into spaces where people were feeling disconnected, unseen, unheard, so that I could provide them with a different experience of themselves and one another. So as a relationship coach, I do and have done a number of things, from working with individuals, couples, families, and organizations around how we navigate hard conversations, how we support one another in ensuring that we are not only seeing and hearing one another, but also really acknowledging one another's strengths, et cetera. And I'd say over the last 6 to 7 years have also really focused on supporting others in the field in learning how to be in spaces with individuals, couples, and families who are struggling, where we are able to check our own agendas, our own biases, our own stories, our own struggles, in order to better connect with those who are in front of us, to the right of us, and to the left of us, but also to ensure that we are supporting others in feeling less afraid of having hard conversations and really being able to embrace those conversations, while also acknowledging the fullness of who we are and really supporting whether individuals or companies, systems, and sort of stripping away this idea that we have to show up perfectly or perform in a certain way in order to be deserving of connection.
Yes.
And so as a relationship coach, one of the things that I really pride myself on is being able to show up in my own authenticity and my own vulnerability, my own transparency, and acknowledge that I don't have the answers, that I simply offer a space where others feel safe enough to be able to connect with what already exists inside of them. And I am also the first to say, hey, I missed that opportunity last week to ask you that really hard question, or I notice that your face changed when I made that particular comment. Can you share what just happened for you? And if there's something that I need to own, I'm going to own it. And when we model our ability to show up in our own humanness and in our own vulnerability, we create the space for others to be able to do the same.
Wow, that was a really awesome a way of describing what it is that you do. Because, if I may say so, life is about serving, right? It's about what can I do to give to the next person. And you exemplify that in so many ways of giving, right? If I could just talk about one of my own experiences, right? So I'm first a recovery coach, right? And so in my experiences as a recovery coach, I run across a lot of people who, they get 30 days in recovery, 60 days, and now they've met the love of their lives, And more often than not, because I know how this thing goes, that's usually not the case, right? And people end up relapse. Unfortunately, some of them don't make it back. And so when you had talked about you were starting a program for relationships, I jumped right on it, right? I needed to have that experience so that I could be able to share not only the recovery, but how my clients or whoever it is that I came across was able to, how can you create a healthy relationship, whether it's with someone else or with you? So when you came and introduced, like, I'm going to do this a relationship coaching class, it was just like red light went off. I needed that. And so when you talk about the relationship coaching class, what's the name of it and how can people become a part of it?
Yeah. So it's through the Jessica Yaffa Coaching Institute. Mm-hmm. We have no fancy name for it. It is relationship coaching certification course. It's on my website, which is jessicayaffa.org. And it is the idea behind it is that whether you are a professional in the mental health field, someone who's wanting to get into the mental health world, and or are just someone who is wanting to be able to support others who are around you and who you are interfacing with in their relationships as well as your own, the goal is really to create a space where everyone can access some additional tools and ways of being and ways of showing up, both in our professional life as well as with one another.
Right on. And listen, y'all, right there on the wall, it's my certification that I got from her class. Yes. And so, you talked about some of the things that inspired you. Would one of the things that inspired you to do this be some of your own personal experiences with relationships?
Oh, for sure.
Can you explain, can you elaborate on how it inspired you from your own personal experience?
Totally. So I knew that I was going to be in the social service world literally from the time I could speak. My family jokes that one of my first words was inappropriate at about a year and a half. So I was analyzing everything that was happening around me from a very early age. But I did actually end up in a very abusive relationship. Started in high school and went into my early 20s. I got married and we had a child very young. My dad had just passed away just before I found out I was pregnant. And so my family was in a lot of turmoil and I was in absolute chaos. And it was through following that relationship and through my own healing journey that I recognized how the empty and broken and shameful parts of me allowed me to participate in a relationship that ended up being incredibly harmful, and that I didn't feel like I had spaces in my own life where I was able to really talk about those dark, shameful, disconnected parts of myself, but also where I was able to talk about what was happening in my relationship. I felt a lot of judgment. I felt misunderstood. I felt disconnected from my family and friends. And so through my own healing journey, and as I went back to school and continued my own career pursuit in mental health, really recognized that if I could find a way to not only represent that space that I didn't have, but also support others in being that space, that would feel incredibly meaningful for me.
Right on, right on. You know, audience, I talk about a lot. One of the things that I use, one of the phrases that I use a lot is, you can't heal what you won't reveal. And you talked about not having the space at first versus having the space. What was it like for you when you realized that there was a space for you to be able to talk about what your experience was?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. I think I didn't trust the space for a really long time. So I think the space was available to me for far longer than it took me a lot longer to actually show up in the space than the space being available to me. The space was available to me before I was able to actually step into the space. And then I would sort of like tiptoe into the space, like, let me give you this part of myself and see if you still show up. Now I'm going to share this little part of myself. And I'm sure that this is going to be the thing that is going to cause me rejection. And when I continued to sort of practice that with the expectation that I was going to be judged, shamed, left, rejected, and wasn't, that changed my whole life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I echo that, right? Because that's what happened for me. And it reminds me, I always use this as well. It reminds me of when God freed the Hebrews from slavery, right, in Egypt. And the journey was supposed to only take 11 days, and it took 40 years. That's one of the things that happened to me as well, because this, like you said, the space was there. First, I didn't know. And when I did know, because of everybody that was supposed to be a safe place for me wasn't, and then as a man rules, I was reluctant to open myself up and be able to tell people about what was really going on. And because of that, it prolonged the pain and the agony that I experienced. But again, when I opened myself up, you talked about healed, right? This is one of the things. This is the result. You know, we healed. I mean, we healed what we revealed. So we got to a place where we were safe enough to talk about what was really going on, and we got to heal. And now, in a place to be able to share our experience with the world and help other people get healed as well. So when you talk about Jessica Yaffa's coaching, what were some of the buts that wanted to get in the way of you starting that?
Oh man, I mean, how long do we have? Because the list is significant. I would say, but I'm not smart enough.
Right.
But I don't have anything to share that is worth anybody listening to. But I don't have the support behind me in order to get it off the ground and get it public facing in the way that it would need to be in order to be successful. But I'm still not perfect, and I still make mistakes in my own relationships. So who am I to teach or train others? But I have some letters behind my name, but I don't have other letters behind my name. But I have tried to do big things before and have failed. But I am not ready to take big risks, in that I feel much safer when I stay small. Mm-hmm. I mean, should I continue, or is that like good enough?
The list goes on and on, right? We will create some buts, right? Mm-hmm. Just so that we can stay in what we may call a safe place, which is another word for a comfort zone. Mm-hmm. I heard and understand that our comfort zones are our greatest hindrances, right? So when you talk about getting out of that, because you move some butts, right, in order to be able to do what it is that you do, and you're doing a wonderful work. Oh my God, you all got to chime in this to Jessica Yaffa. How did you get rid of the butt?
I'm going to be honest, Paul. I think I still deal with the butts.
Come on.
And so I think my biggest. The biggest or most significant way in which I've been able to sort of move through that is to continue to acknowledge it when it shows up, mm-hmm. and check myself. So this butt feels really big today. It feels really real. It feels really true. And yet I believe that I'm supposed to be doing this. And so I'm going to show up anyway.
Right.
So there are some of those butts that have either become much quieter or non-existent. Mm-hmm. Because I've been able to prove over time that the space in which I show up from and that others experience in me and through me is worth something and makes a difference. I've had enough of that experience over time that I think some of those butts have diminished.
Yes.
And yet in the moment where I'm continuing to feel challenged, or I don't have enough signups, or I've just had a really hard session with a couple and those butts creep up, I'm able to really acknowledge that feels really true right now. Mm-hmm. And yet it doesn't mean that it is. Right. And I'm going to continue to push forward because I'm doing something that matters enough that I move through the discomfort.
Right. 100%. Because, and I'm glad you shared that, because doing this right here, there were a lot for me. I talk about how when I knew that God wanted me to do this, okay, well, I need this. He gave it to me plus something. Okay, well, now I need that. And what I found out, it was those were the excuses that I put in place so that I could continue in the butt and get him to say, okay, that's okay. You ain't got to do it. Mm-hmm. But, he kept on providing. And I remember one day he had said to me, he said, "Are you scared?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Do it anyway." Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, you're not going to give me a hug. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going, it's like, do it anyway. And I appreciated him saying that. And you just basically talked about do it anyway, in spite of how you feel, right? Yeah. Because there's going to be someone out there that you're going to touch. They say, if it's one person or 1 million, give it to them, because somebody needs to hear what it is that we're talking about. And it brings me to this quote that I have on my wall. It says, "You either sitting on your butt or standing on your why." And even in the midst of the butts telling us, but, okay, here's the why overpowers that. You talked about the voices getting low versus the other voices overpowering those so that we can continue on what we need to do. And the fact that some of the butts won't go away. You just have to keep moving in spite of them. And you just talked about that. And so if you will, would you share with us what is a personal or professional but that got in the way of a healthy relationship for you?
I would say the most profound personal but that got in the way of healthy relationships. I had one set of buts as I entered into the relationship with my ex-husband in high school that propelled me into that relationship. I showed up in that relationship from a place of insecurity and lack of worth and those sorts of things. And then those buts exponentially grew while I was in the relationship, right? Because of the messages that I ingested and what I was told about myself. And those stuck around for a long while. And so I would say the most significant but that prevented me from really stepping into a healthy relationship for years after that first marriage ended was the but around, but when people see who I really am, I am not going to be lovable. So I may be able to perform my way into relationship or offer certain parts of myself, my body, my brains, money if I had it, my desire and willingness to do for you. I could offer all of that and perform my way into enoughness. But when you really see the fullness of who I am, that I make mistakes, that sometimes I can't get out of bed, that I struggle to show up for myself in certain moments, that I have this past or this history that I still have some shame around. When you see that, then you're going to leave. Then you're going to walk away. Then you're going to abandon me. Then you're going to hurt me. And so but you haven't seen this yet was, I think, the sticky point for me that really kept me stuck in making bad choices and accepting things that I should have never accepted.
Yes, 100%. I'm echoing everything she's saying, right? Because, you talked about some of the experiences that you had. You navigated in relationships based on some of the experiences that you had, and some of the experiences that I had growing up, I thought was healthy, right? I come to find out that that it wasn't, right? It actually diminished relationships. It actually blocked healthy relationships. Some of the things that I grew up learning, whether it was professional, personal, especially in marriage with children. One of the things that I had to learn was how to navigate a relationship with a child, with my children, from a perspective of allowing them to be human and have a voice. Mm-hmm. When you think about that, how can you support or help someone that's a parent, right? Mm-hmm. Learn how to do that and still be a parent.
Mm. I want that red button after I make this statement because it's about to be a mic drop.
Let's go.
One of the things that I struggled profusely with as a parent coming out of an abusive marriage was that I wanted my child to experience no pain, no hurt, no discomfort. And so what I thought was being the best parent that I could be was to ensure that he lived in a happy space all of the time with nothing that pushed up against his ability to feel comfortable. So that means that he didn't have a lot of boundaries, that when I instituted a boundary, I was willing to back up from that boundary when it made him uncomfortable, that I wouldn't ask him to do certain things or show up in certain ways that I thought would be too much or cause him stress. I wanted him to be living in Disneyland all of the time. And it wasn't for a very, very long time that I recognized and have now gained all sorts of education around and now provide support to families around this idea that when we talk about what we know as safe and secure attachment, and I won't get too clinical on you, but when we talk about the way in which a child or a person, an individual experiences a sense of safety in themselves and in the world, it is through consistency, transparency, accountability. Mm-hmm. And so when I say to my child, if you don't do this, this is going to be the consequence, and I don't then follow through, I become an untrustworthy or an unsafe attachment figure. When I say to my child, if you do this, you can expect these things, right, and I follow through, right, it may cause them discomfort. They may put up a fight, and yet they are relying on me to show up in the ways in which I say, yes, so that they can experience me and the world is safe. Right. You are trustworthy. I can expect people to do what they say that they're going to do. Mm-hmm. The world is predictable. When I expect a certain thing to happen, it's going to happen. Yeah. And that is how we build individuals, people that are able to show up in the world knowing how to self-regulate, knowing how to accept what might feel like discomfort, knowing how to show up in a way that allows them to acknowledge their own discomfort while also being responsible and respectful individuals. And so when I'm able to remind myself and others that I work with that being boundaried and showing up consistently in those boundaries is actually a gift to our children.
Yes.
And they are relying on us for it.
Yes.
That can be a motivator like nothing else.
Yes. Listen, y'all, how to navigate a healthy relationship with your children and kick your butt out one-on-one. Yes. Yes. All right. So thank you so much for that, Jessica. Because again, we do have to learn how to navigate healthy relationships with our children, and again, allow them, right, to make the mistakes. Allow them to fall on their face. Allow them to do things that's going to actually hurt their fingers and their toes and their knees and all that kind of stuff, and still be there for them. Thank you so much for that, because we live in a world, unfortunately now, where I was watching a comedy show by Mike Epps, and he talked about how a lot of the children of the day don't know how to do nothing, don't know how to do anything, and it's more of the parents who allowed this and created this system that the kids live by than the children. And so one of the things that we have to do is learn how to have healthy relationships with our children from a perspective of, listen, this is what I say that I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to show up in a relationship. I'm not going to hold your hand all of the time. However, I'm going to be here. You know what I mean? Some of the times you're going to have to fall. You're going to have to make mistakes. You're going to have to make choices. You're going to have to make decisions that probably won't be healthy. However, I'm here, and I'm going to let you do it. And I had to learn that the hard way. God had got on me about my youngest, because I tried to do the exact same thing. But, and I let him go. And life is so much better. He and I have a wonderful relationship. He's doing a lot of responsible stuff as well as irresponsible stuff. Mm-hmm. And guess what? I let him do it. Yeah. And I'm still here. I like what you talked about when you mentioned perform my way. Perform my way. Oh my God, that resonated with me so much, because that's more often than not, when we don't know who we are, or we have been in places that has been so harmful for us, that's what happens. We perform our way so people won't leave. We perform our way so that people will feel like we're enough. We perform our way for whatever reason. So when you talked about that, how did you get away? How did you kick that butt? Because that's a butt. How did you kick that out?
Man, one of the hardest practices I think that I have engaged in and still have to engage in from time to time, I'd say it's multi-layered. Okay. Started as I started to share my own story a little more publicly and was sure that my public perception was going to shift, mm-hmm. that the professionals who I was speaking to were going to no longer regard me as being as qualified in the field, or were not going to refer to me any longer, or were going to judge me for what I had been through. As I started to speak publicly with 5 people, and all 5 said, you have to share this part of you with anyone that you are able, because number one, it is such an important point of connection for all of us. Number 2, you're creating the space for us to show up vulnerably. And number 3, you are so much more sort of relatable when you allow yourself to be fully seen. And that was the response I got. That was one building block. Mm-hmm. And then when I shared with 20, and the 20 came back and said, we have so much more respect for you and feel so much more connected to you and are so much more excited about being able to share the resources that you have to offer with the people who we're working with. That was another building block. And then when I think 5 years into my second marriage, I remember the day like it was yesterday, called my husband and said, I don't have time to stop at the grocery store. It was like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And a good wife makes a fresh meal every day. Otherwise there's hell to pay, right? That was the story that was ingrained into me.
Yes.
And so when I called him, literally sweating and sure that he was going to figure out that I was a fraud and not the superwoman wife that he had signed up for, and said, I'm so sorry. I've had a long, long day. I was in training all day, but I'm on my way to the grocery store. I'll be home in 20 minutes. And he said, are you kidding? I'm going to Chipotle. Do you want chicken or steak? That was a huge building block, right?
Right on.
And so I still have to practice in certain moments. And yet I am much more free of that story than I have ever been before.
Amen. Amen to that. Practice, because it's not a one and done.
That's right.
Right. It's a practice. It's a lifestyle. They talk about, that's one of the things that they talk about in recovery. They say recovery is a lifestyle now. And that's one of the things that healthy relationships and navigating those things has to be a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Kicking your butt out has to end up being a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I appreciate you saying that. A couple of more questions before we get out of here. I don't want to keep you. I could keep Jessica forever, and we can just have these conversations and be able to add value to people. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about. Because due to the fact that you kicked your butt out, right? And even sometimes you still hear the voices, mm-hmm. in spite of the butts, you'll continue to move forward because what you're doing, you're adding value to people, right? And that's a wonderful thing. And sometimes we, as people who serve in these capacities, we add value to people. T.D. Jakes had said it one time. He says, I'll be on the stage preaching about faith, and then I'll go home and I'll cry in the bed of no faith. And so as we add value to people, right, how do we stay in a space where we feel like we are valuable? Because we can add value, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost practicing what you preach. Mm-hmm. So how do you continue to believe in your value?
Yeah. You and I have had some conversations without the headphones on about this.
Yes.
Yes. For me, it comes back to boundaries.
Yes.
And a practice.
Yes.
And practicing saying no, mm-hmm. practicing creating space for myself, and practicing letting me sit in the discomfort of doing nothing. Yes. And really sinking into this acknowledgement that when I am taking a nap, when I am having a cup of coffee out in my back patio, when I am choosing to stay home with takeout and a movie instead of going to a speaking event or to the thing that other people expected me to show up to, in those moments, although it's incredibly uncomfortable, that is me actually practicing my value. Mm-hmm. So it's boundaries, mm-hmm. right? It's similar to what we talked about just a few minutes ago, that when I'm able to say, I don't know that I have the bandwidth to see that 9th client tomorrow, and they're going to be better served by my saying, what about the following day, so that I can be fully present for you? That is better for them, and that is better for me. Yes. When I'm able to say, I am wiped out and I am stuck in my story of the more I perform, the more value I have, and I'm going to take a 2-hour break tomorrow so that I can have a nap and put on my fuzzy socks, although that feels incredibly uncomfortable for me, and recognize that it changes nothing about how others are experiencing me or the gifts that I am bringing to the world. Yes. That is me practicing out my value.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that because, again, a lot of times we can get stuck in my value is in me performing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the value is in just sitting in the house with our socks on, in a recliner, eating, in my case, eating some Popeyes. You know what I mean? Yes. No, I don't supposed to be eating it, but
I'm going to talk to you about that offline.
Okay, we're going to do it. But sometimes, and that doesn't diminish our value. It actually adds value to us, right? Because one of the things that my former manager had mentioned to me when I first started coaching, she every week we would have our meetings, and she would say to me, how you doing? Because you can't serve people if you're not taking care of yourself. And that was a big thing for me, especially with the fact that all of the places that I had ever worked for before that, it was about production. It never asked, how you doing? It was like, listen, this need to get done, this need to get done, this need to get done. But when she started doing that helped to add value to me because I was able to not worry about what was going to happen if I took a day off.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to worry about what was going to happen if I sat down and did nothing. And sometimes, and I learned in that, sometimes doing nothing is doing something.
That's right.
Right. So thank you so much. And lastly, I would just want to ask you, what can you leave the audience with to put in their work bag of kicking their butts out? What can you leave them with?
I would say if we come back to wanting it to be about relationship with self and others and building connection, there's one exercise that I encourage most individuals and couples and even organizations to do on a daily basis to practice the building of that connection and being fully seen. And I think it really helps also with sort of this idea that I have to show up perfectly or be perfect in order to be deserving of connection. And it's sharing every day something that felt really hard or challenging or vulnerable for me today is or was something that felt really good that I want to celebrate with you is. And one way that I would like to intentionally connect with you before the day is over is. And that can be with our children, that can be with an intimate partner, that can be with a friend, and or it can simply be our own journaling practice. I want to acknowledge something that felt really hard that I want to let go of. I want to acknowledge something that is worthy of celebration that I accomplished. And I want to practice connecting with myself before the day is over in any number of ways. And that can look like anything that feels connected for each individual. It shouldn't be the same for all of us.
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jessica Yaffa, for joining in and having this conversation with me on Kick Your Butt Out. Listen, we can sit here forever and talk because, again, this woman, she's a small woman, but she's packed with so much gifts, right? And so many things, wonderful things that she has to be able to give the world. The world needs to continue to know who Jessica Yaffa is. I'm glad I know her personally. Hallelujah. Watch this. Personally and professionally. So thank you so much, Jessica. We're going to be doing another one coming to you all sometime soon. So please be looking out for another interview with the wonderful, awesome Jessica Yaffa. And listen, like I always say to y'all, I love every last one of you all, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Till next time, be well. Do the next right thing. God bless you all. And if you looking for a butt, it's going to always be easy to find one. This is Paul, your hip-hop relationship and recovery coach with Jessica Yaffa, and we signing out. Deuces.